All right, another scale practice, and again, I'm going to just go through this at an ordinary pace because you have the ability to pause and back up and slow down at your leisure. So, quick refresher on some unit conversions that we talked about in the last practice that we did, right? 1 meter is the same as 100 centimeters, which is the same as 100 millimeters. 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. Most frequently, you'll probably go kilometers to centimeters, unless it's a very tiny map. Most of the time, we're going to be measuring in centimeters. In imperial units, 1 foot equals 12 inches, 1 mile is 5,280 feet, and then if we multiply that by 12 inches a foot, we get 63,360 for inches per mile. And then down at the bottom are conversions between the two sets of units. Okay, so what we're practicing this time around is we have this lovely touristy map of Gibraltar, and it's got bicycle routes on it, so I want to bicycle around Gibraltar, and once again, no scale, so I have no idea how long this is going to take me. Is this something I could do in a day? Do I need to plan a couple of days for it, etc.? So what we're going to do is use that last method that I talked about in the last video, using a reference map that has similar distinctive features on it in order to figure out the scale between the two, right? So here is a standard map from the CIA World Factbook that shows the major features that are on this map, and I'm going to just flip back to the other one for a second so you can see some of those, right? So we have these breakers down here that are pretty distinctive, except that this one is kind of cut off, and then we also have a really nice distinctive thing here in the runway width, right? We could try to maybe do some measuring here, but some of these shapes are a little bit irregular and could be suffering from generalization. So this is a nice crisp man-made feature that shows up nicely on both maps. So that's what we're going to use for this process, okay? And the process is exactly the same as what we did in the last practice video with the air photo and the map, right? So we had a thing with a known scale, we had another thing with an unknown scale, and we worked from one to the other, and it's the exact same process. So on our reference map, the scale is 1.5 inches equals half a mile, and that's just based on this actual scale bar that's here, right, in its real size, not blown up on this slide. This is 1.5 inches for this half mile. So that's my scale. 1.5 inches equals half a mile. The airfield is 3 inches long, right? So that runway strip, let me back up again. This runway in its actual size is 3 inches long. So I'm sure you can imagine in your head already how long the airstrip is, right? 1.5 inches is 1 mile, so 3 inches is 1.5 inches is a half a mile, so 3 inches is 1 mile, right? On the touristy map, the airfield is 5 inches long. So we want to figure out the scale on the tourist map. So first we're gonna work out the actual representative fraction on the known map in order to transfer that over, right? So we have our same equation we had before, except this time I clarified it by saying the known map, so we know which one we're working on. So we're just working with this first section right here. We'll plug in what we know. So 1.5 inches to a half a mile, and then 3 inches for our known feature. And then we're going to put the X where the ground distance is. And like I said, we can already kind of do that in our head and figure out the ground distance is a mile, but we're going to just check it and make sure that we did that correctly. So cancel out the units, right? Inches to miles. We get rid of all of these units on this side. So then the only thing we have left over here is inches on the right-hand side of the equation. Multiply across, right? 1.5, 0.5 times 63,360. And then we're going to cross multiply to get X by itself, same as we did before, right? So 1.5 times X, and then 3 times 31,680. So 1.5X equals all of this. And then we want X by itself, right? So we're going to divide both sides by 1.5. And we'll get X equals 63,360. Right, which if you remember from the conversion slide I just gave you, that's a mile. So that confirms our mental math that we did at the beginning. We were correct. The airstrip is a mile long. Again, we would probably convert this to something more meaningful if we were going to use it as a travel distance, but we're going to just plug it back into the other equation. So I'm going to leave it right where it is, just like we did with the air photo, right? So now we have our unknown map. So same equation, I just changed this so that we know which map we're on, right? 1 over X equals unknown map over ground. we're going to plug in what we know, right? So the unknown map, the distance was 5 inches. And then our ground distance, remember that doesn't change. Just like with the air photo, the ground distance does not change. So still 63,360. I left it in inches so that I could just do this without having to do extra unit conversions, right? So 1 over x is 5 over 63,360. And remember, when it's in this format, all we have to do is get it so that the numerator is a 1, right? So we're just going to simplify, divide it by 5 over 5, and we get 1 over 12,672. So this is the representative fraction for the touristy map. Okay? It's kind of an awkward number, but that's okay because we're not going to measure with that. Now that we know that information, we want to figure out how long a scale bar would be, because I want to ultimately make a scale bar on my map, right? So, touristy map, 1 to 12,672, and I would like a scale bar representing 500 feet of ground distance. So, start with my equation, put my representative fraction over here on the left, and then my ground distance that I want to represent is 500 feet, so what I'm trying to figure out is how long that would be on the map, right? So, convert the units, because I'm not going to draw a foot-long scale bar on the map. I'm going to draw it in inches. So I'm going to go feet to inches here. Multiply across, so x times 1, 500 times 12, right? So I get 1 over 12,672 equals x over 6,000 inches. Don't lose track of your inches, right? Because that's the whole point. We'll multiply both sides by 6,000 in order to get x by itself. And what we wind up with is 6,000 divided by 12,672, which then simplifies out to 0.47 inches. So a little bit less than half an inch. And if it's a touristy map and I'm just guessing, it's probably okay. But basically the next step to make that scale bar then is to get out my trusty ruler. And I'm going to make a scale bar that's just a little bit less than half an inch for 500 feet. And then I could make a second interval, also 0.47 inches to get to 1,000 feet. Draw that on my lovely touristy map, and then I'm good to go. And I can just quickly eyeball distances as I'm moving around the map, or maybe, use my thumb or something to represent those. So you can absolutely make your own scale bar on a map that you're given. You just need another piece of information to get there. Okay, so walk through this, make sure it makes sense. Like I said, it's the same process you did with your air photo. It's just instead of a photo and a map, it's 2 maps. So make sure that's comfortable. The next set of videos, we're going to start adding in the vertical component. So we'll start talking about slope. So make sure that scale makes sense to you, and then move on to the next ones.